Have you ever spent months building something only to realize nobody actually wanted it? That's the painful truth many startups face. But what if there was a smarter way to build success by learning fast, testing small, and avoiding waste? Welcome to the Lean Startup, where success isn't about luck, it's about learning. Most people think a startup begins with a big idea. They imagine an entrepreneur with a perfect plan, investors, and a shiny product ready to conquer the world. But Eric Ries discovered something different. He spent months building his dream product, a virtual avatar system called IMVU. He and his team worked day and night, adding every cool feature they could imagine. And when they finally launched it, boom, no one cared. No one downloaded it, no one paid attention. Ries says that's when he learned his most painful and most powerful lesson. The biggest waste is building something nobody wants. According to Eric Ries, a startup isn't just a small company. It's any organization trying to create something new under conditions of uncertainty. That means it could be a tech founder building an app. It could be a student creating a new social project, or even a manager in a big company testing a fresh idea. If you're working on something new and you don't know for sure if it will work, target. You are an entrepreneur. So what's the true purpose of a startup? It's not to make a perfect product. It's not to impress investors. It's not even to grow fast at first. The real goal is to learn, to discover what customers actually want and are willing to pay for. This is called validated learning. It's when you test your ideas with real people and real data, instead of assuming you're right. Think of it like being a scientist. You start with a hypothesis. People will love this feature. Then you test it in the real world. If the results prove you wrong, great. You just saved months of wasted effort. If it proves you right, now you know you're on the right track. Traditional businesses plan everything for years before launching. They write long business plans, raise big money, and build giant products. But the Lean Startup says, start small, test fast, learn faster. Your first product doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to teach you something valuable about your customers. That's the key mindset shift. Stop asking, can I build this? Start asking, should I build this? Because innovation isn't about creating more, it's about creating what truly matters. When Eric Ries launched his unfinished MVU version, full of bugs and missing features, something amazing happened. People started giving honest feedback. Some users complained, some suggested improvements, and a few actually loved it. That feedback became gold. It showed the team what users really cared about and what didn't matter at all. In that moment, Ries realized something powerful. Real learning happens only when you put your idea in front of real people. So Chapter 1 teaches us this. A startup is not a product, it's a learning machine. Your job as an entrepreneur is not to guess the future, but to run experiments that reveal it. Because the faster you learn, the faster you grow. But wait, if anyone trying something new can be an entrepreneur, does that mean you can use the Lean Startup method too, even if you don't own a business? Let's find out in Chapter 2, Define, where Eric Ries explains who a true entrepreneur really is. What if I told you that you don't need to be the founder of a company to be an entrepreneur? That you could be sitting in a classroom, a big corporate office, or even your own garage, and still be part of a startup. Sounds strange, right? In this chapter, Eric Ries redefines what it truly means to be an entrepreneur, and it might just change how you see yourself. When most people hear the word startup, they imagine Silicon Valley, tech geniuses building apps, raising millions, and wearing hoodies. But Eric Ries says that's a myth. A startup isn't just a bunch of coders with laptops. A startup is any group of people trying to create something new under uncertainty. That means a new school project testing a social project, a doctor creating a new healthcare system, or a corporate employee designing a new service. All of these are startups because none of them know what will work yet. Ries introduces a powerful idea, the entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is someone inside a large company who thinks and acts like a startup founder. They test new ideas, challenge old systems, and innovate from within. They might not own the business, but they have the same spirit, the same curiosity and hunger to make things better. For example, when a team at a big company creates a new app or product that's never been tried before, they're operating like a startup. They're just doing it inside a bigger structure. Lesson: entrepreneurship isn't a job title. It's a state of mind, a way of thinking and working when you face uncertainty. Ries reminds us that startups are not many versions of big companies. Big companies focus on executing known strategies, but startups are searching for the right one. A big company already knows its customers, its market, and its business model. A startup doesn't. It's like exploring a jungle with no map. That's why startups need different tools, different rules, and a different mindset. Traditional management focuses on efficiency, doing things right. But a startup must focus on learning, figuring out what's right to do in the first place. In every company, there are two types of work: execution work, where you follow a plan that's already proven, and innovation work, where you create something entirely new. Eric Ries says the second kind, innovation, is where the lean startup method truly shines. Because innovation is unpredictable. You can't plan it like a machine. You have to experiment, measure, and learn as you go. That's why even large companies can use the lean startup method if they want to stay alive in a fast-changing world. Many big companies fail, not because they stop working, but because they stop learning. They get too comfortable, too slow, too afraid to take risks. But the companies that survive, like Amazon, Google, and Toyota, are the ones that keep their startup spirit alive. They allow employees to experiment, make mistakes, and learn from them. This is where the entrepreneurs come in. They're the dreamers inside the system, people who refuse to let the company get stuck in old ways. So if you're watching this and thinking, I don't have a startup, I just work a regular job, Eric Ries would tell you, you're still an entrepreneur if you're solving new problems in uncertain situations. Maybe you're testing a new business idea. Maybe you're launching a side hustle. Maybe you're trying to change how your team works. That's what Lean Startup is about. It's not just a method, it's a movement. It's a way of thinking that helps anyone, anywhere, turn ideas into impact. The Lean Startup method isn't just for startups. It's for everyone who wants to create change. Because entrepreneurship isn't about where you work, it's about how you work. If you're testing, learning, and improving, you're already part of the startup revolution. But here's the next big question. If startups are all about learning, then what exactly should they learn first? How do you know if your idea is truly something people want? That's what we'll uncover in Chapter 3, Learn, where Eric Ries explains the secret weapon of every successful entrepreneur, validated learning. What if the main goal of your startup isn't to make money, not even to build the perfect product, but to learn? Sounds strange, right? But Eric Ries says this is the real truth of entrepreneurship. A startup's only job is to learn what works before running out of money. In this chapter, we'll discover how learning faster than your competition can become your greatest superpower. Let's be honest, most startups start like this. You have a big idea. You spend months designing, coding, or manufacturing your dream product. You finally launch it, and then you wait for the customers to come. But what if they don't? What if nobody buys it? That's exactly what happened to Eric Ries when he built his first product. He assumed people would want it. He didn't test, didn't measure, he just believed. And that belief almost destroyed his company. That's when he learned a priceless truth. Assumptions are the biggest danger in business. After failing, he changed his entire approach. He stopped chasing perfection and started chasing truth. He began testing his ideas before building the full product. He would launch small experiments, gather real customer feedback, and use that data to decide what to do next. This process became the heart of the lean startup: validated learning. It means proving with real evidence that your idea actually creates value for customers. You don't learn from meetings, you don't learn from opinions, you learn by watching what real customers do. Because what people say and what people do are often very different. To learn fast, you need an MVP, the minimum viable product. Think of it like this. If your goal is to test whether people like your egg cake, you don't bake 100 perfect cakes. You give them one small piece to taste. That's what the MVP is, a small, testable version of your idea that helps you learn what customers truly want. Eric Ries launched his first MVP version of IMVU, even though it was full of bugs and missing features. Guess what? People still downloaded it. They didn't care about the small issues, they cared about solving their problem. That's when Ries realized that perfection is the enemy of progress. Eric says entrepreneurs need to think like scientists. Every feature, every idea, every strategy is just an experiment to test this idea. Here's how it works. Start with a hypothesis. For example, customers will pay for faster shipping. Build a simple version of the idea, like your MVP. Test it with real customers. Measure the results. Learn and decide what to do next. If the data supports your idea, great, move forward. If not, pivot and try something new. Each test brings you closer to building something that truly matters. At first, it feels weird to say learning is more important than winning. But think about it. If you fail but learn something useful about your customers, you're still ahead, because every mistake gives you data, and every data point helps you build a better version next time. Startups that focus only on profits may die fast when things go wrong. But startups that focus on learning evolve, adapt, and grow stronger. It's like a scientist discovering truth one experiment at a time. Each test makes you smarter. Most entrepreneurs fall in love with their idea. They believe they already know what people want, but that's a dangerous illusion. Eric Ries says, "The question isn't, can this product be built? The question is, should this product be built?" That's why Lean Startup isn't about building faster, it's about learning smarter. When you treat every step as an experiment, you stop fearing failure, because even a failed experiment gives you valuable insight. And that's the mindset difference between dreamers and true entrepreneurs. So here's what Chapter 3 teaches us. The true purpose of a startup is not to make a product, it's to learn how to build a sustainable business. Learning is the currency of innovation. The faster you learn, the stronger you become. And the company that learns fastest wins. But now that we know learning is everything, how do we actually run these experiments? What steps should we take to test our ideas in the real world, quickly and effectively? Get ready, because in Chapter 4, Experiment, we'll dive deep into the build, measure, learn loop, the engine that powers every successful startup on the planet. Imagine this. You've got an idea that feels like $1 billion winner. But instead of guessing if it'll work, what if you could prove it with science? Welcome to Chapter 4 of The Lean Startup, where Eric Ries shows us how successful entrepreneurs treat every idea like an experiment, not a gamble. And the key to that success? A powerful process called build, measure, learn. Think of your startup as a laboratory. Every product, every feature, every marketing idea is an experiment designed to test one thing. What do customers really want? In a world full of uncertainty, guessing is suicide. So instead of asking, what will work? Start asking, what can I test today? Ries says a startup is not a place for perfection, it's a place for discovery. Just like scientists, entrepreneurs form a hypothesis, something they believe might be true. Then they design an experiment to find out if it actually is. That's how learning happens, not through opinions, but through evidence. Here's the heartbeat of the Lean Startup. Build, measure, learn. It's a cycle and it never stops. Let's break it down. Build, turn your idea into something testable like an MVP. Measure, launch it and track how real users behave. Learn, Use the data to decide what to do next: improve, change, or pivot. This loop is simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Why? Because it replaces guesswork with facts. Every time you go through the loop, you move closer to understanding your customers and creating something they truly value. In the lean startup world, speed is everything. The faster you move through the build, measure, learn cycle, the faster you learn. And the faster you learn, the faster you grow. Traditional businesses take months or years to launch something new. By the time they test it, the market has already changed. But lean startups test early, learn fast, and adapt instantly. Ries says, the only way to win is to learn faster than anyone else. That's your competitive advantage, speed of learning, not just speed of doing. When Eric Ries worked on IMVU, him and his team made a radical choice. Instead of perfecting the product behind closed doors, they launched it early, full of flaws, bugs, and missing features. Crazy, right? But that's how they learned what really mattered to users. Some features users ignored completely, others they loved. That data shaped every next decision. If they had waited for perfection, they would have wasted years and missed the truth. The MVP, or the minimum viable product, is the tool that makes this possible. It's not a smaller version of your final product, it's a learning tool, built just to test a hypothesis quickly. You can make an MVP in many creative ways. A simple landing page to test interest, a demo video to see if people care, a fake buy now button that tracks how many click, even if the product doesn't exist yet. The goal isn't to trick people, it's to learn what they truly want before you spend months building the wrong thing. Because remember, no, the biggest risk isn't failure, it's wasting time on the wrong idea. In most companies, people argue endlessly about who's right, the boss, the designer, or the engineer. But in the lean startup world, nobody's opinion matters more than the customer's behavior. You don't win arguments with words, you win them with data. Instead of saying, I think this feature will work, you say, let's test it and see. That's how you turn every debate into a discovery. Once you build something, measure results, and learn, you go again. Each cycle brings more clarity. Each test sharpens your understanding of what customers care about. Over time, your experiments turn uncertainty into confidence. And that's how a small idea becomes a successful business. This is the power of the build, measure, learn loop, a continuous rhythm of testing, learning, and evolving. So here's the golden rule from Chapter 4. Don't plan your way to success, experiment your way there. Startups that treat every step as an experiment grow smarter, faster, and stronger. They don't wait to be perfect, they launch, learn, and improve nonstop. In the lean startup world, the question is never, are we done? It's always, what did we learn? But wait, every experiment starts with a belief, a guess. So how do you know which assumptions to test first? Which ones can make or break your business? In Chapter 5, Leap, Eric Ries reveals the leap of faith assumptions every entrepreneur must face and how to test them before they destroy your startup. ROIC. Every great startup begins with a leap of faith. You don't have proof. You don't have data. All you have is belief. But here's the danger. Those beliefs, your assumptions, can make or break your business. In this chapter, Eric Ries reveals how to test those risky assumptions before they destroy your startup. Because success doesn't come from being certain. It comes from being curious. Every new idea starts with a guess, a set of assumptions about the world. You might believe people want faster food delivery. Customers will pay extra for convenience. This app will save people time. But here's the truth. Until you test those beliefs, they're just stories you tell yourself. Eric Ries calls these your leap of faith assumptions, the bold, untested ideas your entire startup is built upon.
They're exciting, but dangerous, because if you're wrong, everything else collapses. That's why your first job as an entrepreneur isn't to build your product, it's to test your assumptions early. Ries says every startup has two crucial leap of faith assumptions. The value hypothesis, does your product actually deliver value to customers? And the growth hypothesis, how will new customers discover your product? If either one is wrong, your business fails. So instead of building everything and hoping people will come, you must design experiments to prove or disprove those assumptions early. Eric learned this lesson the hard way. When building IMVU, he assumed people wanted to integrate their new chat system with existing ones like AOL and MSN. So his team spent months building that feature. They thought it was genius. But when they launched, customers didn't care. In fact, they didn't even want to connect with those old systems. They wanted something totally different, a place to meet new people, not old friends. That mistake cost months of work and thousands of dollars, but it also taught a priceless lesson. Never assume what customers want. Always test it early. In traditional business thinking, you start with a business plan. You write down your market, your target audience, your revenue goals, and then you execute. But startups live in a world of uncertainty. There's no proven market, no guaranteed demand. So those business plans, they're just educated guesses. Ries says no plan survives first contact with customers. That's why lean startups don't rely on prediction, they rely on experimentation. Instead of saying, we believe this feature will work, you say, let's test it and see. Example, before Airbnb built their platform, the founders didn't have fancy code or millions in funding. They just posted photos of their own apartment online to see if anyone would pay to stay. When people did, that was validation. They learned their idea had real demand before building the full product. That's how modern entrepreneurs make smart leaps, not blind ones. Here's the trick. Not all assumptions are equal. Some are small, like what color button works best. Others are huge, like will anyone even want this product? Ries says you must find the riskiest assumption, the one that could destroy everything, and test it first. Because if that assumption fails, there's no point in testing anything else. So always start by asking, what must be true for this idea to succeed? Then test that first. Every leap of faith turns into a learning opportunity when you test it. You stop building on imagination and start building on insight. And here's the beauty of it. Even if your first assumption fails, you still win because you've learned something valuable. Every test moves you closer to the truth, and the truth is the foundation of every successful startup. So here's what Chapter 5 teaches us. A successful startup doesn't begin with a perfect idea. It begins with a testable idea. Your beliefs are not facts. They're guesses waiting to be tested. Don't leap blindly. Leap with data, feedback, and courage. Because the greatest entrepreneurs aren't the ones who believe the most. They're the ones who learn the fastest. But wait, we know we should test our ideas. But how do we do it? What does a great experiment look like? How can you design a test that gives you real answers fast? That's exactly what Eric Ries reveals in Chapter 6, Test, where we dive into the secret weapon of every lean startup, the MVP. The minimum viable product. Imagine this. You have an amazing idea. You spend months building it. You finally launch, and no one cares. This is the nightmare of every entrepreneur. But Eric Ries says it doesn't have to be this way. What if you could test your idea before wasting time, money, and energy? What if you could find out in days, not years, whether your idea will actually work? Welcome to Chapter 6, Test, where we learn the art of turning your idea into the minimum viable product, the MVP. The MVP is not a cheap version of your product. It's not about cutting corners. It's about learning fast by putting your idea in front of real people as early as possible. Eric Ries defines the MVP as that version of a new product which allows a team to collect the maximum amount of validated learning about customers with the least effort. In simple words, you build just enough to test your biggest assumption. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is information. Most startups fail not because they can't build, but because they build something nobody wants. You might think, if I just add more features, people will love it, but that's not true.
Every extra feature adds time, cost, and risk. The more you build before testing, the more you gamble. That's why lean startups don't wait. They launch small, test fast, and learn even faster. Eric's company, IMVU, once spent 6 months perfecting their product before showing it to customers. They thought users would want to integrate all their existing chat networks. They were wrong. So he learned the golden rule. Don't spend 6 months learning what you could learn in 1 week. After that, Eric's team launched tiny versions, gathered feedback, and improved continuously. That's what testing is all about. Build, measure, learn, repeat. So, how can you test your idea fast? Let's explore a few classic MVP types. The concierge MVP, you offer the service manually to a few people before automating it. Example, before launching a full meal plan app, you personally plan and deliver meals to test interest. The Wizard of Oz MVP, it looks automated on the surface, but behind the scenes, you're doing it all manually. Example, you pretend your app uses AI to recommend clothes, but you're actually picking them yourself. The Smoke Test landing page MVP. You create a simple landing page that describes your product and adds a sign-up button. If people click, that's real interest, proof before product. These MVPs help you answer, do people really want this? The MVP's purpose isn't to get customers, it's to get insight. If your MVP fails, that's not bad. It's a win because you've saved time and discovered what doesn't work. The faster you test, the faster you learn, and the faster you grow. Think of your startup like a scientific experiment. Every MVP is a test, every test gives you data, and every piece of data moves you closer to truth. Many founders fear launching too soon. They say things like, "It's not ready yet. People might hate it. We'll wait until it's perfect." But perfection kills startups. Eric says, if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you launched too late. Your early users aren't there to judge. They're there to teach you. User feedback is the fuel that powers your next version. Before building Dropbox, founder Drew Houston didn't write thousands of lines of code. He made a simple 3-minute video showing how Dropbox would work, dragging, syncing, sharing. That video went viral in the tech community, and thousands signed up before the product even existed. That was a test. It proved people wanted simple cloud storage, and that validation led to one of the biggest tech successes of our time. That's the power of an MVP. Testing isn't just about your product, it's about your mindset. You stop thinking, I need to be right. You start thinking, I need to learn fast. You stop fearing mistakes. You start embracing them, because every mistake teaches you something no business plan ever could. That's what makes lean startup entrepreneurs different. They don't chase perfection. They chase progress. So, what's the lesson?
Don't wait until your product is perfect to show it to the world. Build something small, test your riskiest assumption, and learn from real users. The faster you test, the faster you grow. Because success doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being responsive. But now that we've learned how to test our ideas, what happens next? How do we measure what we've learned? What kind of data should we trust? And which numbers are just vanity? That's what Eric Ries reveals in Chapter 7, Measure, where we explore how to use real data to track progress and make smarter decisions. Imagine you've built your MVP. You've tested it. People are signing up. Some even love it. But here's the real question. Are you truly making progress? Because in startups, growth can lie. You can have thousands of downloads and still be heading toward failure. So how do you know if you're growing in the right direction? That's what this chapter is all about, how to measure what really matters. Most startups love big numbers. 10,000 downloads, 50,000 page views, 100,000 followers. They look good on paper. They impress investors. But Eric Ries calls them vanity metrics because they make you feel good, but they don't help you learn anything. They can't tell you if customers love your product, if your strategy is working, or if you're wasting time. It's like stepping on a broken scale. It gives you numbers, but not the truth. Instead of chasing vanity metrics, startups need actionable metrics, data that helps you make real decisions. Eric Ries says a good metric must be actionable, it clearly shows cause and effect, accessible, everyone in your team can understand it, and auditable. You can trace it back to real events and customers. For example, instead of saying, we got 1,000 new users, say, we ran a referral program and 20% of users invited a friend. That's actionable data. In traditional business, you can measure profit, revenue, or market share. But for startups, those numbers mean nothing at first. You don't have stable customers. You don't have predictable sales. So how do you measure progress? Eric Ries introduces a new concept, innovation accounting. It's a system to measure progress when your product and market are still being discovered. It works in 3 steps. Start with your MVP, the simplest version of your product. Launch it and collect data. How many people sign up? How many come back? How many buy? That gives you your baseline metrics. Even if your numbers are small, that's okay. What matters is knowing where you stand today. Now, make small, focused changes. Your build, measure, learn cycle in action. Try a new onboarding process. Change your pricing. Improve your landing page. After each change, measure how customers respond. Did conversion improve? Did retention increase? If yes, you're tuning your engine. Your startup is learning what works. If no, don't panic. You've learned what doesn't work. Every experiment gives you direction. After running several experiments, you'll face a big decision. Do you keep improving your current path, persevere, or change direction completely? Pivot. The data will tell you. If your experiments show continuous improvement, even small gains, keep going. But if numbers stay flat no matter what you change, it's time to pivot, to test a new idea, feature, or audience. That's how data saves startups from dying slowly. Most startups look at total numbers, total users, total downloads, total sales. But these can hide problems. Ries recommends cohort analysis, tracking how each group of users behaves over time. Example, 100 people joined in week 1, 30 stayed after 1 month. 100 people joined in week 2, 50 stayed after 1 month.
That's real progress because you're improving retention, not just adding new users. Cohort analysis helps you see whether your changes actually help customers stay longer. Another powerful tool is A/B testing. You show two versions of something, A and B, to different users. Whichever performs better gives you real data about user preferences. This removes the guesswork from decisions. You don't argue about opinions. You look at results. As Eric says,
if we can learn faster than anyone else, we win. Progress isn't about working harder or adding more features. It's about learning faster, backed by evidence. Every metric should answer one question. Are we closer to building something people truly want? If the answer is yes, you're on the right path. If the answer is no, it's time to change direction. That's the essence of the lean startup method. So here's what Chapter 7 teaches us. Don't get fooled by big numbers. Measure what matters. Focus on learning metrics, not ego metrics. Your true progress isn't how much you've built, it's how much you've learned that helps you serve customers better. But now that we can measure and track our progress, how do we know when to make the big move? When should we stop tweaking and start changing direction completely? That's what Eric Ries explores in Chapter 8, Pivot or Persevere, the ultimate decision every startup must face. Every entrepreneur faces this moment. You've worked for months, maybe years, building your dream. You've tested, measured, and learned. But your growth is flat. Customers aren't staying. Now comes the hardest question of all. Do you pivot, change direction completely? Or do you persevere, keep going, and push harder? This is the moment that separates great founders from stubborn ones. Welcome to Chapter 8, Pivot or Persevere. Startups don't fail overnight. They fail slowly when founders keep working on something that isn't working. Eric Ries says the most dangerous thing in a startup isn't failure, it's wasted learning. You might be collecting data, but ignoring what it's trying to tell you. That's why the Pivot or Persevere meeting exists. A regular checkpoint where you and your team stop, review your metrics, and make a brutal, honest decision. Because sometimes the bravest move isn't pushing harder, it's changing direction. A pivot isn't a random change. It's a structured course correction designed to test a new fundamental hypothesis. In simple words, a pivot means you've learned something important, and you're using that learning to move toward a better version of your vision. It's not giving up, it's growing up. Think of it like a GPS recalculating your route. You're still heading toward the same destination, you're just taking a smarter path. Many founders fall in love with their ideas. They say, we just need more time. We need more features. People will get it eventually. But hope isn't a strategy. If your core metrics, like retention, engagement, or conversion, aren't improving after multiple experiments, then it's not time to double down. It's time to pivot. Eric Ries says, the hardest part of entrepreneurship is deciding when to quit and when to stick. Let's look at some famous examples. Instagram. It started as a check-in app called Bourbon, but users only loved one small feature, photo sharing. The team pivoted and focused only on photos. That pivot created Instagram. Nintendo originally made playing cards. They pivoted into toys, then into video games. Today, they're one of the most loved brands in the world. YouTube began as a dating site where people uploaded video introductions, but users started uploading all kinds of videos instead. The founders pivoted and built the YouTube we know today. These weren't random guesses. They were smart, data-driven pivots based on real customer behavior. Eric Ries lists several kinds of pivots every founder should know. Zoom in pivot.
Focus on one feature that users love and make it the whole product. Like Instagram, focusing only on photo sharing. Zoom out pivot. Realize your product is too small. It needs to be part of something bigger. Customer segment pivot. Discover that your product works, but for a different audience than you expected. Customer need pivot. Learn that your target customers have a different problem than you thought. Platform pivot. Move from an app to a platform, or vice versa. Business architecture pivot. Change how your company creates and captures value. For example, switching from high margin to high volume sales. Value capture pivot. Change your monetization model, like going from ads to subscriptions. Channel pivot. Find a better way to reach customers. For example, switching from retail to direct online sales. Technology pivot. Use a new technology to deliver the same value more effectively. Each pivot is a decision born from learning, a bold step towards something that works better. So how do you know when to pivot? Look for these signs. Your metrics are flat despite repeated experiments. Customers love the idea, but not the product. Users say interesting, but don't engage. You keep trying new features, but nothing changes. That's when data whispers, it's time. Eric Ries says, the problem isn't the vision, it's the strategy. The vision should be constant, the path can change. Pivoting isn't just a business decision, it's emotional. It means admitting that your idea, the one you've poured your heart into, isn't working. But pivoting doesn't mean failure. It means you've learned something powerful enough to start fresh, smarter, stronger, and more focused. Every successful founder has faced this pain. What sets them apart is that they listen to what the data is saying. That's true courage. Here's the simple 3-step formula Eric gives for a successful pivot. Review your metrics honestly. Use actionable data, not vanity numbers. Involve your entire team. Discuss openly. Ask, what have we learned? What's really working? Make a clear decision. Don't drag it out. Once you pivot, commit 100%. Because half-hearted pivots lead nowhere. Here's the core message of Chapter 8. Startups live in uncertainty, but learning is your compass. If your experiments prove your strategy is working, persevere. If not, pivot. Never be afraid to change direction when the data demands it. As Eric Ries says, a startup's only mission is to find a sustainable business model before running out of resources. Pivoting is not weakness, it's wisdom. But once you've pivoted, how do you make sure your new direction grows faster than before? How do you scale without losing your focus or speed? That's what Eric Ries explains in Chapter 9, Batch, where we discover how working smaller can actually make your business grow bigger and faster. Roque. In most companies, the logic is simple. Do more at once, save time, and get bigger results. But what if that logic is completely wrong? Eric Ries discovered something shocking. When you work in small batches, not big ones, you actually move faster, make fewer mistakes, and learn way more. In this chapter, we'll uncover how working smaller can help your startup grow bigger. Welcome to Chapter 9, Batch. Think of a traditional factory. It makes products in large batches. Thousands of units go through design, then production, then testing, and finally shipping. That sounds efficient, right? But there's a hidden danger. If something goes wrong early in the process, like a design flaw or a broken part, you won't notice until thousands of products are already made. Result? Massive waste, huge losses, and tons of time fixing something that could have been caught early.
That's the big batch trap. Now, imagine doing this same work, but in tiny batches. You make 1 or 2 products, test them, fix mistakes, then move on. If something fails, you catch it immediately. You learn faster, waste less, and improve continuously. This idea, working in small, quick cycles, is at the heart of lean startup thinking. It's not just about manufacturing. It applies to software, marketing, design, and product development too. In startups, big batches happen all the time. You plan 6 months of features before testing one. You write 50 blog posts before checking which topics people like. You spend weeks coding before asking users if they even need the feature. That's all big batch thinking, and it slows you down. Eric Ries says, instead, release in small batches, learn in small batches, improve in small batches. The smaller the batch, the faster you learn what works. At Eric's startup, IMVU, the team used to release updates every few months. Each release was massive, full of new features. When something broke, it took weeks to find the problem. So they changed strategy. They started releasing tiny updates, sometimes multiple times per day. Suddenly, problems were easy to spot. Feedback came faster, and customers felt the product improving in real time. That's when Eric realized small batches create big learning. Here's why small batches work. Faster feedback, you learn immediately what users love or hate. Less waste, you stop investing in ideas that don't work. Lower risk. If something fails, it affects only a small part of your product. Greater focus. The team can fully concentrate on one small improvement at a time. It's like driving at night with headlights. You can't see the whole road, but moving a few meters at a time safely gets you to your destination. Car, light bulb. Many founders fear releasing small updates. They want everything to be perfect before launch. But perfectionism kills speed. Eric says, perfection is the enemy of progress. Releasing small batches doesn't mean lowering quality, it means raising learning speed. Because every small release teaches you something that gets you closer to perfection faster than planning ever could. From small batches comes the concept of continuous deployment. It means releasing code or product updates automatically and frequently, sometimes even multiple times a day. Why? Because each release is a mini experiment. You make one small change, measure the impact, and learn immediately. Big companies like Amazon, Netflix, and Facebook do this constantly. They don't wait for giant updates. They improve continuously, one small step at a time. That's how they stay ahead. Working in small batches doesn't just improve systems, it improves teams. When feedback is fast, motivation stays high. Teams see their work make an impact quickly. Failures don't crush morale, they spark learning. People stop fearing mistakes because every mistake is small and fixable. This culture of continuous improvement turns ordinary teams into innovation machines. Gear, fire. Imagine a chef trying to create a new dish. If he cooks 100 plates before tasting even one, he might discover too late that it tastes awful. But if he cooks just one plate, tastes it, adjusts the spices, and repeats, he perfects the recipe fast. That's the essence of small batch learning. You test early, fix fast, and improve continuously. So, what's the message of Chapter 9? Stop working in big, risky batches. Break your process into tiny, testable steps, because every small batch teaches you something valuable. And when you stack those small learnings, they build massive success. As Eric Ries says, the faster we can learn what works and what doesn't, the sooner we can succeed. Small steps, fast learning, big results. Rocket. But here's the question. Once you've learned how to work in small batches, how do you make your company keep improving forever? How do you build a culture that doesn't just grow fast, but stays innovative and adaptable even as it scales? That's what Eric Ries reveals in Chapter 10, Grow. Seedling. Every entrepreneur dreams of one thing, growth, chart. But not all growth is the same. Some companies grow fast, then crash faster.
Others grow slow, but last forever. So, what separates sustainable growth from temporary hype? In this chapter, Eric Ries reveals the 3 powerful engines of growth that keep a startup alive and expanding, not for a few months, but for years. Welcome to Chapter 10, Grow, Seedling. Everyone loves the idea of a startup that blows up overnight. You launch, you go viral, and millions of users join instantly. But Eric Ries warns, that kind of growth is like fireworks. It's bright, fast, and gone in seconds. Fireworks. Real sustainable growth isn't magic. It's the result of deliberate systems, repeatable processes that turn small progress into unstoppable momentum. He calls these the 3 engines of growth. Let's break them down one by one. Gear. 1. The sticky engine. This engine works when customers love your product so much, they keep coming back and never leave. Heart. Think of apps like WhatsApp or Spotify. Once people start using them, they rarely stop. The key metric here is customer retention. If your users keep coming back faster than you lose them, your business grows naturally. The secret? Focus on creating value and solving a real problem, because no marketing can save a product people don't love. Gear. 2. The viral engine. This one's about word of mouth. When one happy user brings another, and that new one brings more, you've created a viral loop. Repeat. Think of how Dropbox grew. They offered free extra storage to users who invited friends. That single decision turned users into marketers. Here, the key metric is the viral coefficient. If every user brings more than one new user, your growth is automatic. But remember, viral growth only works if the core product is good enough to share. No one shares something that doesn't deliver value. Gear. 3. The paid engine. Finally, the paid engine, the oldest and most direct. Money. You spend money to attract customers through ads, promotions, or partnerships. If each new customer earns you more than it costs to get them, your growth is profitable and sustainable. The formula is simple. Customer lifetime value, LTV, must be greater than customer acquisition cost, CAC. If not, you're just buying short-term numbers instead of long-term success. Now, here's the tricky part. Most startups rely on one primary engine at a time. But as the business evolves, you may need to switch engines. For example, a company might start with viral growth, then later focus on retention to stay stable, and eventually use paid growth to scale globally. The danger? Trying to run all 3 engines at once before mastering one. Eric says, pick one engine, optimize it, then expand. The real magic of these engines isn't speed, it's compounding. When you retain customers, attract new ones, and make each one more valuable, growth becomes self-sustaining. Imagine a snowball rolling down a hill. It grows bigger not because it's fast, but because it keeps building on itself. Snowman. That's sustainable startup growth. At MVU, Eric's startup, they used the sticky engine. They didn't chase virality at first. Instead, they focused on making sure users stayed.
They tracked retention numbers closely. If retention dropped, they didn't spend money on ads. They fixed the product first. Only when people loved the experience did they start scaling. And that's how they achieved consistent growth, built on real user love, not hype. Every growth engine depends on real metrics, not vanity ones. Eric warns against fake signals like, we got 10,000 downloads, our website traffic doubled. Those numbers don't mean success unless users stay, buy, or refer. Instead, measure what truly drives growth: retention, referral rate, and LTV versus CAC. These are called innovation accounting metrics, the numbers that prove your startup is learning and growing sustainably. Many startups die not because they didn't grow, but because they grew the wrong way. They focused on short-term spikes, big campaigns, viral stunts, or fancy launches, but ignored the fundamentals. Eric says, if you can't keep the customers you attract, you're not really growing. Sustainable growth is about long-term relationships, not temporary excitement. To grow sustainably, founders must think like gardeners, not gamblers. A gambler hopes to hit a jackpot. A gardener nurtures growth patiently, watering daily, pruning, and improving. The gardener's approach wins every time, because growth is not an event, it's a habit. So, here's the big takeaway from Chapter 10. Your startup doesn't need a miracle to grow. It needs the right engine, powered by continuous learning and real customer love. Choose your growth engine, master it, and let it compound over time. Because real startups don't explode, they evolve. But here's the big question. When your startup starts to grow fast, how do you keep the same culture, creativity, and innovation alive inside it? How do you avoid becoming one of those big companies that stop learning? That's exactly what Eric reveals next in Chapter 11, Adapt. You've built your startup. It's growing. Customers are coming in, systems are working, and you're finally gaining momentum. But then something unexpected happens. The world changes. A new competitor appears. Customer behavior shifts. Technology moves faster than your plan. Now, the question is, can your company adapt? Because in business, survival isn't about being the strongest or smartest, it's about being the most adaptable. Welcome to Chapter 11. Eric Ries says, startups that cannot adapt will fail, no matter how good their original idea was. Think about it. The first plan you make is almost never right. Your customers will surprise you, your market will evolve, and your assumptions will break. So, instead of trying to predict everything, you must learn to respond quickly to change. That's the essence of adaptability, continuous learning, and constant course correction. To adapt fast, a company must build a feedback culture. That means people aren't afraid to admit when something's not working. They don't hide mistakes, they share them. They don't defend bad ideas, they replace them. Eric gives a powerful truth here. A company that never tolerates mistakes will never learn. If your team is scared of failure, you'll end up making the same mistakes again and again, just more quietly. Adaptable startups treat feedback as fuel, not as criticism. One of the tools Eric shares for adaptability is called the 5 Whys. It's a method to dig deeper when something goes wrong. Here's how it works. When a problem happens, don't just fix the surface issue. Ask why it happened. Then ask why again and again until you reach the root cause. Example: 1. The website crashed. 2. Why? Because the new feature broke the server. 3. Why? Because it wasn't tested properly. 4. Why? Because the testing team didn't have enough time. 5. Why? Because the schedule was too tight. Now you see, the problem wasn't the code, it was the system. That's what true adaptability looks like, fixing the root, not the surface. When you apply the 5 Whys regularly, you don't just solve problems, you build a learning organization. Every failure becomes a lesson. Every setback becomes a system improvement. Over time, your company becomes smarter, faster, and stronger. Eric calls this institutional learning. It means your company learns as a whole, not just individuals. As startups grow, they often lose flexibility. Processes get heavier, teams become siloed. People start saying, "That's not my job." That's when innovation dies. So, how do you grow and stay adaptable? Eric gives one word: discipline. Adaptability isn't chaos, it's structured flexibility. You set clear goals, but you stay open to changing the path that gets you there. You learn fast, adjust fast, and move forward again. At IMVU, Eric's team once had a major outage that took the website down for hours. Instead of blaming the engineer, they used the 5 Whys approach. They discovered that the real cause wasn't bad coding. It was that new engineers weren't trained in the company's deployment system. So they created a new rule. Every time a problem happens, improve the process. After a few months, their system became nearly foolproof, not because they stopped failing, but because every failure made them better. Now, let's talk about leadership. To make a company adaptable, the leader must lead by example. That means admitting when you don't have all the answers. It means listening more than talking. And it means rewarding truth over comfort.
Great leaders don't punish failure, they punish not learning from it. Eric says it best, the only way to win is to learn faster than anyone else. So, how can you make your startup adaptable from the inside out? Here's Eric's formula. 1. Encourage honesty. Let people speak up when something's not working. 2. Embrace small failures. They prevent big ones. 3. Hold regular reflection meetings. Ask, what did we learn, not just what went wrong? 4. Use the 5 whys. Fix systems, not symptoms. 5. Celebrate improvements. Every fix, no matter how small, is progress. Because a company that learns fast becomes unstoppable. Think about nature. Species that couldn't adapt, dinosaurs, mammoths, they vanished. But small, flexible species survived every change. The same is true in business. Markets evolve, technology advances, and customer expectations rise. The startups that thrive aren't the biggest, they're the quickest to learn, adjust, and reinvent themselves. Adaptation isn't a one-time event, it's a continuous process. So, here's the heart of Chapter 11. Success belongs to startups that learn faster than their competitors. Adaptability isn't weakness, it's your ultimate strength. The faster you learn, the faster you improve, and the longer you last. Don't aim to be perfect, aim to be adaptable. But here's the next big question. When your company learns how to adapt and grow, how do you build a system that can handle massive scale without losing that startup spirit? How do you grow big but stay lean? That's exactly what Eric Ries reveals in the next chapter, Chapter 12, Innovate. Every great company starts with innovation, but here's the hard truth. As companies grow, they often stop innovating. They become obsessed with structure, process, and profit. They lose the spark that made them great in the first place. So the big question is, how can a company stay innovative even after it becomes successful? Eric Ries answers that in this game-changing chapter, Innovate. Innovation is exciting when you're small. You move fast, break rules, and experiment. But once your company grows, everything changes. Now you have departments, budgets, managers, meetings, and politics. Suddenly, taking risks feels dangerous. People start saying, let's wait for approval. Let's test it next quarter. Let's play it safe. And that's how innovation quietly dies. Eric calls this the innovator's dilemma, when success from the past becomes the biggest barrier to future growth. To survive long-term, every company, big or small, must create a system that allows innovation to keep happening continuously. Eric says, a startup is a human institution designed to create new products under extreme uncertainty. And that uncertainty never truly disappears. It just evolves. That's why even established companies need to act like startups within startups. They must keep experimenting, learning, and adapting, not just once, but forever. Eric introduces a powerful concept, internal startups. These are small, independent teams inside a big organization that function like real startups. They have their own goals, their own experiments, and most importantly, the freedom to fail and learn. They use the same principles as lean startups. Build, measure, learn cycles, MVPs, minimum viable products, validated learning. This approach lets big companies keep innovating without risking the entire organization. But here's the problem. Big organizations are naturally resistant to change. They'll often try to kill new ideas before they even begin. That's why innovation teams need protection. They must have a separate budget, their own workspace, and leadership that supports experimentation, even if it fails sometimes. Otherwise, bureaucracy will crush creativity. Eric says, if you want innovation, you must protect your innovators. It's like planting a young tree. You shield it from the storm until it's strong enough to stand on its own. To balance freedom and control, Eric introduces another genius idea, the innovation sandbox. Imagine a safe space where teams can experiment freely, but within clear boundaries. For example, they can release features to only 1% of users. They can run tests without needing top-level approval. They must measure outcomes and share learnings. This sandbox keeps risks small,
but learning fast. It's freedom with responsibility. That's how you make innovation both safe and scalable. Eric shares how the company Intuit used lean startup principles to keep innovating. Instead of depending only on big annual projects, they empowered small teams to run quick experiments. One team created a new feature for tax filing, tested it, gathered feedback, and improved it, all in just weeks. That process became a model for the entire company. Today, Intuit is known for being one of the most innovative tech companies, not because of luck, but because of process-driven innovation. Innovation doesn't just come from teams, it starts from leadership. Leaders must shift their mindset from control to empowerment. Their job is not to manage every move, but to create an environment where people can experiment safely and learn quickly. Eric calls this leading by learning. The best leaders don't have all the answers. They build systems that discover answers faster than anyone else. At first, lean startup is a strategy, but the ultimate goal is to make it your company culture. That means every employee, from intern to CEO, values experimentation. Every project starts with a hypothesis, not a guarantee. Every failure becomes a lesson, not a loss. When that happens, innovation stops being an event. It becomes a habit. And that's how great companies like Amazon, Google, and Tesla keep innovating year after year. One of the hardest challenges is managing today's profits versus tomorrow's possibilities. Your core business needs stability. Your innovation teams need freedom. If you focus only on stability, you stop evolving. If you focus only on innovation, you lose control. The secret is balance. Build systems that let both thrive together. Eric says, the companies that survive are the ones that keep both engines running, the core engine and the innovation engine. So, what's the heart of this chapter? Innovation doesn't end when your startup succeeds. It must become your company's lifeblood. Because the moment you stop innovating, someone else will. Build small, experiment constantly, and protect the dreamers who dare to try something new. That's how companies stay young, no matter how big they become. But now that you've learned how to innovate continuously, how do you measure true progress when everything is changing so fast? How do you know if your company is actually getting smarter or just busier? That's what Eric Ries uncovers in the final chapter, Epilogue and Waste Not. Every year, millions of startups are launched, and millions of them fail. Not because the founders weren't smart, not because they didn't work hard, but because they wasted time building something nobody wanted. Eric Ries ends the Lean Startup with a message that every dreamer needs to hear. The biggest waste in entrepreneurship isn't failure, it's building the wrong thing. Welcome to the final chapter, Waste Not. Most people think waste means money, but in startups, it's something deeper. It's the waste of human potential. Brilliant people working day and night chasing goals that don't matter. Building features no one uses. Perfecting ideas no one asked for. That's the real tragedy. Eric says, our job as entrepreneurs is to minimize that waste, to make sure every ounce of effort moves us closer to something people actually need. In traditional business, productivity means working faster or producing more. But in the lean startup world, productivity means learning faster.
It's not about how much you build, but what you learn from what you build. Because if you can learn what customers want before you run out of money, you win. Eric calls this the ultimate goal of entrepreneurship, to learn what works before time runs out. Throughout the book, Eric repeated one phrase, validated learning. It's the process of turning guesses into facts through real experiments. Every MVP, every test, every feedback loop gives you data, and that data tells you what to do next. This learning is the true progress of a startup. Because startups don't move forward by making stuff. They move forward by learning what works. But let's be honest, waste isn't just about numbers. It's about emotions. The pain of seeing your idea fail, The frustration of working hard and not seeing results? The fear of realizing you've been building the wrong thing? Eric knows that pain. He's lived it. And that's why he created the Lean Startup, to give entrepreneurs a way to learn without burning out, to make failure useful. Because if every mistake teaches you something, then nothing is truly wasted. Eric says something powerful here. Failure is just a form of learning if you know how to listen. That's why Lean Startup thinking changes how we see mistakes. Instead of asking, did it fail or succeed, we ask, what did we learn? Every failed experiment gets you closer to the truth. And the truth, not the plan, is what leads to success. The Lean Startup isn't just a book, it's a movement, worldwide. It's transforming how businesses, schools, and even governments work. From Silicon Valley to Tokyo to small towns worldwide, people are using these ideas to solve real problems faster and smarter. Because innovation isn't just for startups anymore, it's for anyone who wants to make a difference. Eric believes the future will belong to adaptive organizations, those that can experiment, learn, and evolve endlessly. At its heart, the Lean Startup is about respect for people. It's about giving teams freedom to think, test, and learn. It's about trusting the process instead of fearing mistakes. And it's about creating work that matters. Because when you give people the tools to learn faster, you unlock their full creative potential. That's the real gift of Lean Startup thinking. Not just better businesses, but better humans. Eric ends the book with a vision. He dreams of a world where entrepreneurship is more scientific, where every new idea is tested, measured, and improved with purpose. He wants a world where innovation is not random, but repeatable and teachable. A world where the next generation of builders can create faster, fail smarter, and waste less. Because when we stop wasting potential, we start building a better future. So here's the final message. Don't waste your time chasing perfection. Don't waste your energy avoiding failure. And never waste your talent building what doesn't matter. Instead, experiment, learn, adapt, repeat. That's the true path of the modern entrepreneur, and that's the timeless lesson of the Lean Startup. So now that you know how to build, measure, and learn your way to success, what will you build next? Will you start small, test fast, and learn faster? Or will you wait until someone else does it first? Because the truth is, the world doesn't need more ideas. It needs more learners.
Have you ever spent months building something only to realize nobody actually wanted it? That's the painful truth many startups face. But what if there was a smarter way to build success by learning fast, testing small, and avoiding waste? Welcome to the Lean Startup, where success isn't about luck, it's about learning. Most people think a startup begins with a big idea. They imagine an entrepreneur with a perfect plan, investors, and a shiny product ready to conquer the world. But Eric Ries discovered something different. He spent months building his dream product, a virtual avatar system called IMVU. He and his team worked day and night, adding every cool feature they could imagine. And when they finally launched it, boom, no one cared. No one downloaded it, no one paid attention. Ries says that's when he learned his most painful and most powerful lesson. The biggest waste is building something nobody wants. According to Eric Ries, a startup isn't just a small company. It's any organization trying to create something new under conditions of uncertainty. That means it could be a tech founder building an app. It could be a student creating a new social project, or even a manager in a big company testing a fresh idea. If you're working on something new and you don't know for sure if it will work, target. You are an entrepreneur. So what's the true purpose of a startup? It's not to make a perfect product. It's not to impress investors. It's not even to grow fast at first. The real goal is to learn, to discover what customers actually want and are willing to pay for. This is called validated learning. It's when you test your ideas with real people and real data, instead of assuming you're right. Think of it like being a scientist. You start with a hypothesis. People will love this feature. Then you test it in the real world. If the results prove you wrong, great. You just saved months of wasted effort. If it proves you right, now you know you're on the right track. Traditional businesses plan everything for years before launching. They write long business plans, raise big money, and build giant products. But the lean startup says, start small, test fast, learn faster. Your first product doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to teach you something valuable about your customers. That's the key mindset shift. Stop asking, can I build this? Start asking, should I build this? Because innovation isn't about creating more. It's about creating what truly matters. When Eric Ries launched his unfinished MVU version, full of bugs and missing features, something amazing happened. People started giving honest feedback. Some users complained, some suggested improvements, and a few actually loved it. That feedback became gold. It showed the team what users really cared about and what didn't matter at all. In that moment, Ries realized something powerful. Real learning happens only when you put your idea in front of real people. So Chapter 1 teaches us this. A startup is not a product, it's a learning machine. Your job as an entrepreneur is not to guess the future, but to run experiments that reveal it. Because the faster you learn, the faster you grow. But wait, if anyone trying something new can be an entrepreneur, does that mean you can use the Lean Startup method too, even if you don't own a business? Let's find out in Chapter 2, Define, where Eric Ries explains who a true entrepreneur really is. What if I told you that you don't need to be the founder of a company to be an entrepreneur? That you could be sitting in a classroom, a big corporate office, or even your own garage, and still be part of a startup? Sounds strange, right? In this chapter, Eric Ries redefines what it truly means to be an entrepreneur, and it might just change how you see yourself. When most people hear the word startup, they imagine Silicon Valley, tech geniuses building apps, raising millions, and wearing hoodies. But Eric Ries says that's a myth. A startup isn't just a bunch of coders with laptops. A startup is any group of people trying to create something new under uncertainty. That means a new school project testing a social project, a doctor creating a new healthcare system, or a corporate employee designing a new service. All of these are startups because none of them know what will work yet. Ries introduces a powerful idea, the entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is someone inside a large company who thinks and acts like a startup founder. They test new ideas, challenge old systems, and innovate from within. They might not own the business, but they have the same spirit, the same curiosity and hunger to make things better. For example, when a team at a big company creates a new app or product that's never been tried before, they're operating like a startup. They're just doing it inside a bigger structure. Lesson: entrepreneurship isn't a job title. It's a state of mind, a way of thinking and working when you face uncertainty. Ries reminds us that startups are not many versions of big companies. Big companies focus on executing known strategies, but startups are searching for the right one. A big company already knows its customers, its market, and its business model. A startup doesn't. It's like exploring a jungle with no map. That's why startups need different tools, different rules, and a different mindset. Traditional management focuses on efficiency, doing things right. But a startup must focus on learning, figuring out what's right to do in the first place. In every company, there are two types of work: execution work, where you follow a plan that's already proven, and innovation work, where you create something entirely new. Eric Ries says the second kind, innovation, is where the lean startup method truly shines. Because innovation is unpredictable. You can't plan it like a machine. You have to experiment, measure, and learn as you go. That's why even large companies can use the lean startup method if they want to stay alive in a fast-changing world. Many big companies fail, not because they stop working, but because they stop learning. They get too comfortable, too slow, too afraid to take risks. But the companies that survive, like Amazon, Google, and Toyota, are the ones that keep their startup spirit alive. They allow employees to experiment, make mistakes, and learn from them. This is where the entrepreneurs come in. They're the dreamers inside the system, people who refuse to let the company get stuck in old ways. So if you're watching this and thinking, I don't have a startup, I just work a regular job, Eric Ries would tell you, you're still an entrepreneur if you're solving new problems in uncertain situations. Maybe you're testing a new business idea. Maybe you're launching a side hustle. Maybe you're trying to change how your team works. That's what Lean Startup is about. It's not just a method, it's a movement. It's a way of thinking that helps anyone, anywhere, turn ideas into impact. The Lean Startup method isn't just for startups. It's for everyone who wants to create change. Because entrepreneurship isn't about where you work, it's about how you work. If you're testing, learning, and improving, you're already part of the startup revolution.